you and I are reading these cards at the end,
Yes.
alternately.
Yes.
Elaine wanted to be sure you know that you're supposed to say God is crossed out.
You can read that one.
Good morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Clemson. My name is Barbara Stroop, and I am your worship associate today. Here at UUFC, we welcome all those who come seeking a spiritual home among us, whether this is your 100th time or your first. If you happen to be a first-time visitor, we would love to get to know you. If you are here in person, please be sure to visit our welcome table right outside the sanctuary and stay for conversation after the service, excuse me, during our social hour, right down the hall. If you are at home and viewing us online, we would be happy for you to receive our newsletter so that you can learn more about us. Find us at UUFC.org. The announcements are on the back of the bulletin.
Good morning. My name is Elaine Faithful. I am a cis female. I have gray hair. I wear glasses. I have a gray flowered shirt, a gray cropped pants, Birkenstocks, of course, and I'm a member of the board and chair of the Worship Associates. And I'm a member of the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Clemson on the lands of the Southern Iroquois and the Eastern Cherokee. Now, how's that? Now you know me. Actually, this model of introducing yourselves was very common in, well, it was a practice in the General Assembly that we just had in late July. The Unitarian Universalist Fellowship has a gathering of Unitarians from all over the country every year in the summer. And I had the good privilege and fun, and most of the time, to be the delegate from the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Clemson. The reason why those introductions were made the way they were was for a couple of reasons. One of them is that a lot of folks like me were attending the General Assembly virtually. And so people at home who were visually impaired, would have a good sense of who this person was that was talking to them, instead of this sort of amorphous voice out there in the ether. And it was also beneficial for the hearing impaired. They had an accommodation for them because they had, of course, the ACL signing. They made a particular effort this year to recognize people who were sometimes marginalized. And as a congregation, as an organization and an association of Unitarian Universalists, we are intent upon moving forward in the world and in our denomination to be most inclusive as possible. There was an incredible amount of diversity at the General Assembly this year. You looked out in the audience and there were still a lot of gray hairs, but there were a number of youth that were participating in the programs, a number of people with disabilities, a number of people of other nations and other skin colors than just the typical white Unitarian Universalist. And that was an exciting thing to see. We are growing in our diversity as a congregation. The Sunday service for those of you who attended with me that Sunday was a little disappointing, and I apologize for that. It's unfortunate because there were 2 or 3 programs that were just excellent. And perhaps sometime in the coming weeks and months, we'll be able to show those to you so that you can really see how whiz-bang our organization can be when it comes to speakers. One of the particular speakers was Brian Brook. He wrote the book, Punch Me Up to the Gods. And he's an African-American gay man who wrote his memoir. And he was particularly challenging in that he called on everybody in the audience to write their own memoir. And that was, he told about his experience in writing his memoir, and I'm going to do this quickly as I can. Anyway, he wrote about his own memoir, and I'm just going to stop there because I realize I'm going longer than I intended. Let's see, there's one other thing. I think actually I'm going to stop there. The general, I realize I've gone over 5 minutes, which was what my intent was. But I encourage you all, if you have an interest next year or the year after that in attending the General Assembly, perhaps as a delegate. That's always, I think, a privilege to represent your congregation. I realized I forgot to talk about Article 2, which was a big part of my work with the General Assembly. If any one of you want to be in conversation with me at the coffee hour, I'll be glad to talk with you. Just come up and say hi.
This is a poem by Joanna Fontaine Crawford, and it's called Every Third Thursday. Every third Tuesday, I am a Buddhist. I empty my mind, enlighten my heart, and try to let go of attachments. Every other Friday, I am a Christian. I look for the least of these and try to love God and my neighbor. The full moon of the month finds me Wiccan. I honor the dual nature of God and find my rhythm as maiden, mother, or crone. On the 15th of the month, I am humanist. I respect science, integrity of fellow humans, and all that we have learned and made. Every fourth Wednesday, I am Hindu. I take a breath and understand that what is unfinished now will remain for me to continue next life. On alternate Fridays, I am Jewish. Adonai v'yishmerecha, I tell my children, softly touching each head. And the Thursdays, and the Mondays, and the Saturdays, and the Sundays, and all the other days in between find me reading, or listening, or watching philosophers, Muslims, Mormons, Baha'i, and more fill my heart, touch my soul. And yet, the one thing that none of these provide to me is the certitude that they are the one. They lend me wisdom, sing to my heart, cause me to question, help me find answers, make me more me. And at the end of the day, every day, I am Unitarian, Universalist, in parcel and in pledge, and with all my heart and all my soul, all my mind, and all my strength. I honor this faith. I hold it close as it lets me be me. And we will now sing a song, number 309, Earth is Our Homeland.
before we light the chalice, I need to follow that example. I'm Holley Ulbrich, the Social Action Chair and a member of the Worship Associate teams. And for those of you who can't see me well, my hair is mostly white with a dash of yellow. My glasses are from the Dollar Tree because I lose them so often. And my dress is multicolored. And I, too, honor the Eastern Iroquois and the Southern Iroquois and Eastern Cherokee, I couldn't remember the directions, who occupied this land that we now call ours. It's time for our chalice lighting, and I need a grown-up kid. So Catherine, would you come light the chalice for me? Welcome, Catherine. I know. Sorry about the surprise. It's right over here. Same old place. Okay, and while Catherine lights the chalice, let's say together our words of affirmation. We gather together in a spirit of love with justice as our guide.
This is our chosen covenant, to dwell together in peace,
To seek the truth with freedom and to care for one another. Okay, and now it's time for all ages.
In Catherine's defense, she's been in the Canary Islands for a year, and we did some changes while she was gone. Good morning. My name is Karen Hebel. I am the Director of Lifespan Faith Formation. I am a cishet woman in her early 50s. We'll stretch it to that. With mostly graying dark hair past my shoulders. I am wearing a red and purplish sort of flowered top and navy blue slacks. Our story this morning is in honor of this holiday that we just celebrated, the 4th of July, Independence Day. It's a little long. I'm going to try to edit it lightly as we go along, but it is a true story, and I thought it was one that was worth sharing with you all. It is called Mumbet's Declaration of Independence by Gretchen Wuffel, illustrations by Alex Delanois. Mumbet didn't have a last name because she was a slave. She didn't even have an official first name. Folks called her Bet or Betty. Children fondly called her Mumbet or Mumbet. Others weren't so kind. Her owner, Colonel Ashley, was the richest man in Berkshire County, Massachusetts. He owned an iron mill, a forge, a sawmill, a grist mill, a general store, and 3,000 acres of farm and woodland. He also, of course, owned Mumbet. The colonel's wife, Mrs. Ashley, owned the sharpest tongue in town. All day she would hurl spiteful names at Mumbet, calling her useless baggage, stubborn wench, and dumb creature. Don't mind her jabs, Lizzie, Mumbet said to her daughter. Look at that mountain out there. Rain and wind, ice and snow try to wear it down, but there it stands, strong and rugged, just like us. What Mumbet did mind was someone owning her. Everyone in town worked hard, and many people worked on their own farms. Even servants and hired hands could choose to leave a cruel master. But Mumbet didn't have a choice. She was a servant for life. She gazed at the river running free at the bottom of the meadow. Freedom. She thought of it day and night. One day, while Mumbet was kneading bread dough with Lizzie by her side, glowing coals were heating in the oven. And when it was hot enough, Mumbet shoveled out the coals and put the bread in to bake. Her daughter Lizzie formed her own little loaf from the leftover scraps of dough. Mrs. Ashley came in and screamed at Lizzie, "Thief! How dare you steal my food?" She raised her coal shovel to strike the girl, but Mumbet stuck out her arm to take the blow. Crack! Blood spurted from her arm. Lizzie shrieked. Mrs. Ashley stared. Mumbet wrapped a rag round the wound until the bleeding stopped. All winter long the cut festered, but she never covered it. The wound was her badge of bravery. Folks would ask her, "Why, Mumbet, what ails your arm?" "Ask Madam," she replied. In spring, Mumbet watched the river break free of ice and flood the meadow. If only she could break free. If she could have 1 minute in her life just to say, "I am free." Scrub that kettle, snapped Mrs. Ashley. Mumbet scrubbed and chuckled. Mrs. Ashley didn't own the river of thoughts that ran through Mumbet's head. Others were thinking about freedom too. Americans didn't like the laws and taxes Britain forced on them. Town leaders met in Colonel Ashley's study. "Take the men some food and drink," ordered Mrs. Ashley. Voices rang out as Mumbet entered the room. "The king means to take away our rights," one man shouted. "Do I have rights?" wondered Mumbet. "He would make us slaves," cried another man. "You wouldn't like that, not one bit," thought Mumbet. Colonel Ashley turned to a young lawyer with fire in his eyes. "Write this down, Mr. Sedgwick. Mankind in a state of nature are equal, free, and independent." Mumbet set down her tray. Wasn't she a part of mankind? "The great end of society is to secure those rights wherewith God and nature have made us free." How could Mumbet secure her freedom? The town held a parade when the American colonies declared this independence from Britain. The local men marched off to war for 7 long years to keep hold of that independence. Meanwhile, Mumbet pounded flax stalks until the fiber came free. If she could have 1 minute of freedom, she would be willing to die at the end of that minute. Just to stand 1 minute on the earth as a free woman. Mumbet would be free, but how? The town held a meeting to learn about the Massachusetts Constitution when it was passed, the new law of the land. Mumbet slipped into the back of the hall. She couldn't see over the crowd, but she could hear well enough. "All men are born free and equal." Was this law meant for her? The next day, she picked up a shopping basket as she walked past the store. Mumbet stopped at the crossroads. Perhaps her plan would fail and Mrs. Ashley would treat her even worse than before. She would take that chance. She would go to the young lawyer with fire in his eyes, Mr. Theodore Sedgwick. "Mumbet, what are you doing here?" he asked. Then she made her declaration of independence. "I want to be free. I have got a right to be free." Mr. Sedgwick's eyebrows shot up. "What gives you such a notion?" "The new Constitution says so. All people are born free and equal. I am not a dumb creature. I deserve my freedom." Mr. Sedgwick rubbed his chin. "I don't know." "You wrote those freedom words at Colonel Ashley's house," she said. "Do you believe them?" "Of course, but that was not the law. The new Constitution is the law." Mumbet folded her arms. "Yes, but..." He gazed at Mumbet standing strong as a mountain, pounded his desk. "We will go to court together and test the new law. But if we lose, I will be no worse off," Mumbet said. "And if we win, I will be free." A few days later, a loud knock sent Mumbet to the front door. "Colonel John Ashley," said the sheriff, holding out a paper. Colonel Ashley read it and exclaimed, "Give up Mumbet. She's my property. You know that." "So you refuse?" asked the sheriff. "Of course I do." "Good day, then," said the sheriff. Mrs. Ashley slammed the door, but Mumbet hid a smile. Her fight for freedom had begun. Mumbet and Mr. Sedgwick entered the courthouse on a hot August day. The room was crowded with their neighbors. Colonel Ashley argued that he had owned Mumbet for many years. She was his servant for life. Mr. Sedgwick argued that even though people owned slaves in Massachusetts, no law had ever made it legal. Now, the new Constitution made it illegal. Mumbet was not anyone's servant for life. The jury thought it over and agreed. Mumbet was free, and so was Lizzie. "I suppose I'll have to pay you wages now," snapped Mrs. Ashley. "No, you won't," said Mumbet. "I'm quitting your house forever." Mumbet returned to the courthouse one more time to choose 2 names for herself. From that day on, she was Elizabeth Freeman, and for the rest of her long life, she lived free as a river and strong as a mountain.
Now is the time for our morning offering. If our ushers will collect the green cards, and if we have any children, and anybody brought food for the food offering, we would love to have the children or anybody that wants to help them pick up the food and put it in the wagon. This is for Clemson Community Care. While we're collecting the offering, I'll explain to you about the index card. This service is about words to live by, and everybody has some wisdom that guides their life or just makes them laugh. And so I encourage you to write yours down on the index card. And after the sermon, you can pass them to the end of the row. We'll collect them, and Barbara and I will read them. If you don't want to sign it, that's okay. One of my favorites is from Yogi Berra, who said, when you come to a fork in the road, take it. But there's lots of other words of wisdom. So think about your words of wisdom. And if you don't have a pen or pencil, chances are somebody in your row does. So. This is the time in our service where we share our celebrations and concerns. So Barbara's going to be my stonecaster. In a good way, stonecaster. Before we begin, I particularly want to express joy that we have Sarah here to play for us, and also sorrow that Paula fell Friday and injured her ankle, and Sarah agreed to fill in for us at a very short notice. So thank you, Sarah.
Thank you, Sarah.
And keep Paula in your thoughts. I know it says Corey, but we got a little bit mixed up on who was doing what. Anyway, so it wasn't Corey and it wasn't Paula, but we've got Sarah, and we're grateful. If we have any visitors today that would like to stand and introduce themselves, that's always a gift that we especially appreciate. First-time visitor, second-time visitor, or long time away, just came back, all qualify. Anyone? Nope. Okay. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I can introduce myself. My name is Lucy. I'm a Clemson professor of public health, and I was here very frequently 9 years ago. Now the first time back after 9 years.
Oh, great. Welcome back. Okay.
And I'm Hanshi. I'm his son, and yes, this is also my first time here because he stopped going after my little brother was born, and only now that we have time again. So this is my first time.
Okay, great. Good to have you. Okay. All right, a stone for visitors.
A stone, yes.
Okay. Okay, Howard and Hart commute to UUFC. Where's Howard and Hart? Oh, there you are. Hi, guys. When we lived in Tampa, the commute was 12 hours. When we lived in Chicago, the commute was 40 hours. This past Thursday, we closed on a condo in North Anderson, and it's a 17-minute commute. We'll be seeing more of you. Okay. Okay. Dell. This is Dell, I think.
No.
No. Okay.
Shaking his head.
Can you read that?
Day.
Day. Okay. I started making a couple of new friends yesterday, which makes me happy today. Joy is that one of those new friends is having an anniversary very soon. Great. Okay. Lori Varenhorst, her joy is after a stressful time, I have an apartment. My thanks to Reverend Christina Branham Martin, Petra and Marty Bayer, Joe Harris and his friend Joe, and Carl Dieter for helping me move. Great. Meg Williamson, My joy is the fabulous grounds team that showed up on a hot, humid day. A special thanks to Dave and Karen Sanders and Louis Breger for removing a fallen cypress near the Founder's House. Great. Carol Ward, her sorrow is about Paula Husenfeld with a broken ankle. Please send her your concerns. And Paula actually has one in here. It says, Paula has, yeah, that was one. This is the other one. Paul has fractured her knee in a fall and needs to be home for a bit. She welcomes your calls and cards. And the last stone for those joys and sorrows not expressed, knowing that joys shared are lessened and joys shared are strengthened and sorrows are lessened by being shared. Our meditation is by Leif Seligman. Oh, I'm sorry. We need to sing the children out, right? Yes. Okay. Okay. Go now in peace. Go now in peace. May the spirit of love surround you everywhere. Okay, our meditation is called Each Breath, and it's by Leif Seligman. Loving God, we pause in the stillness to rest for a moment, to quiet ourselves so that we can feel what stirs within us. Each breath draws us closer to the pulse of life, and with each exhalation, we make room for something new. May we find in this gathering the comfort of those who care. May we encounter patience along our growing edges and compassion in our most tender spots. Here may we find the inspiration and encouragement we need to face our challenges and nurture ourselves. And in the presence of suffering across the globe, may we redouble our efforts to practice kindness where we are, in the hope that the light of our actions travels like the light of faraway stars. May our gestures of compassion and generosity seed possibility. May we travel humbly with one another, choosing reconciliation over resentment as we try to live right-sized. When life presses in and shifts us off balance, when pain assails us, when frustration mounts, may the rhythm of our breaths steady us and bring us back to a place of gratitude. May it be so. Our second hymn is a familiar one, Spirit of Life, number 123. I preached my first sermon in July 1976. I was a Lutheran then, and I followed the practice of preaching on one of the assigned readings for that Sunday, the Old Testament lesson, the Psalm, the New Testament lesson, or the Gospel. They were printed on the back of the bulletin. One of the more memorable sermons following this practice was preached by the Reverend Ron Lucky at University Lutheran in the early 1980s. His chosen text was a typographical error in the word resurrection. There was an extra I. It was a Universalist sermon suggesting that all of the I's might also be included in resurrection. 3 families left the church that week. Preaching from the lectionary, a cycle of assigned reading over 3 years, is a practice inherited by Christians from Judaism, or at least among Catholics, Methodists, Lutherans, and Episcopalians. When I discovered this faith tradition, I found we had to find our own scripture to fit the topic, the occasion, and the audience. There is a discipline in having to ground the service within a limited selection of assigned readings, and a somewhat scary freedom in always having to start from scratch. I went in search of my own scriptures, the insights, wisdom, and truth that, like our opening words, comes from many sources. This is a participatory service. Collective wisdom is enriched by sharing it with others, and we can learn from so many sources. I love the second verse of our opening hymn that celebrates earth, words, music, and hope. Word is our glory, our breath of air, our cry, parables, letters, or star names in the sky, or myths that play as poets pray, bring meaning to our lives. So today I want to share with you and reflect on some of my favorite words of wisdom that guide my life. And your index card is your invitation to share yours, and they don't have to be serious. Humor is good too. Your inspired words, and we'll collect them and read them. You can sign them or not as you please. You can attribute to the source if you know it or not. I know that one can simply be attributed to the Bible because the person couldn't remember exactly where it came from. I used to discourage cheating among my students on in-class tests by pointing out to them that pooled ignorance is still ignorance. Unless they happened to really sit close by a really good student who didn't notice that he or she was a person of interest, that might work. But the opposite is also true. Pooled wisdom, shared insights, a memorable turn of phrase can all give us earworms that speak to us when we most need to hear them. Now, I have to say, my head is cluttered with lots of flotsam and jetsam. I'm pretty good at Jeopardy for that reason, unless it's pop culture. Like these from high school, the opening passage of the Aeneid in Latin, the words to wake up little Susie and get a job, and the Marseillaise, which I actually got to sing with a bunch of Frenchmen because I was in France on the 14th of July. But there are also some useful aphorisms in my heads. While the 6 sources of Unitarian Universalism appears to be getting lost in the current and ongoing revision of Article 2, I still hold fast to the value of the second source. That source is words and deeds of prophetic women and men, which challenge us to confront powers and structures of evil with justice, compassion, and the transforming power of love. Wow. From all those gems in my head, I chose 3. One from Ralph Waldo Emerson, a good Unitarian, well, a pretty good Unitarian. One from E.B. White, and one from the late Reverend Forrest Church. So I'll start with Emerson, because his nugget of wisdom inspired the title of my new book, Passionately Moderate. He wrote, "Practice moderation in all things, including moderation." I am passionate about moderation because it's an antidote to this simplistic idea of a binary world of good and evil, right and wrong, black and white, friend and enemy, liberal and conservative, gay and straight. There's always a middle ground. Aristotle taught us that every virtue lies at its midpoint, the moderate spot between its extreme and its opposite. Prudence, for example, which is the economist's favorite virtue, and I'm an economist. It lies between stinginess and extravagance. Aristotle considered temperance to be one of the 4 cardinal virtues, along with courage, prudence, and justice. The extreme of temperance is apathy or indifference, and the opposite in some form of intensity or passion. Now, in our country, we associate temperance with the Women's Christian Temperance Union and abstaining from alcohol. So probably a moderation would be a better translation than temperance. I am a committed believer in the democratic process, which calls for compromise, taking steps in the right direction, gradual improvement, walking a little in the other guy's shoes. All of these invite me to be willing to accept less than complete and final outcomes and win-lose solutions to conflict and problems. One of my favorite ethicists, Rushworth Kidder, wrote that ethical dilemmas call for a trilemma solution. In case you've forgotten your 10th grade geometry, remember lemmas? A lemma is an assumption, a value, a premise. A dilemma says, oh, we got two lemmas here and they don't work together. So a trilemma would say, how can we solve this problem in a way so as to honor both values? That was my dilemma 3 weeks ago at the congregational meeting when we voted on the 8th principle. I firmly support the intent of the 8th principle as honoring our core values, which are expressed both in the current principles and these somewhat more clearly in the proposed revision of Article 2. But I'm also firmly committed to democratic process and to honoring covenant, both of which are part of our current principles. The democratic process was underway to incorporate the core of the 8th principle into the revised Article 2. So I couldn't vote against the anti-racism of the 8th principle, and I couldn't vote to bypass the democratic process, so I did the only thing I could. I abstained. I wasn't trying to persuade anybody else to do that. I just hoped to be heard and understood, which is all we can ask of each other. On a lighter note, my second chosen quotation inspires my journaling every morning. I sit down to write about the events and insights from the day past and the plan for the day just beginning. When I say morning, I mean 5 a.m., by the way, when most normal people are asleep. So E.B. White is the British author of Charlotte's Web, and he wrote something like, I get different versions of it, something like, when I get up in the morning, I can't decide whether to enjoy the world or improve the world. It makes it hard to plan my day. Well, there's no day, so I make it intentional about how I'm going to plan my day and what I hope to enjoy and what I hope to do to improve it. I'm more likely to miss on the improving part than the enjoying part, I have to confess. So those first two quotes have been running themes in my head for a long time, but there's a newer one from Forrest Church's last book, Love and Death, that I read recently. He laid down a 3-part maxim for living and leaving a good life. They are, want what you have, be who you are, do what you can. Want what you have. I learned that wisdom from my poor and frugal but inventive New England mother, who tried to teach us to be content with what we had rather than looking longingly at our neighbors who had cars and store-bought clothes and ballet lessons and fathers. My parents were divorced. But we had a roof over our heads and books from the public library and a great outdoors to play in and my mother's homemade root beer, which was the envy of my childhood friends. Growing up poor taught me something of an indifference to material possessions, to live inside my fertile mind, accompanied by books, and learning from my mother to reuse, repurpose, and recycle long before it became fashionable. When Carl and I were married, planning on academic careers, we joked that we were looking forward to a life of genteel academic poverty. We were academics and we were reasonably genteel, but the poverty part just didn't work out, which was okay. But of his 3 challenges, I have to admit this was the easiest one for me. Be who you are is a challenge that stays with us for most of our lives. Childhood and adolescence are a journey of discovery. Your interests, skills, gifts, and passions with which to shape a life. Other people often play a big role in that discovery, sometimes as role models, sometimes in encouragement, others by trying to dissuade us. If we listen to our inner voices, we can resist the call of those who want us to follow the easy, the comfortable, the profitable, or the safe path, and instead go where our hearts and souls take us. As we age and feel comfortable in our skin, we can help others to see themselves in the mirror we hold up to them. But it's not enough to know who we are. We must also be who we are. That being is not a constant self, but an evolving self, a changing self, an emerging self. Over the course of my professional career, which lasted 50 years, and in the 6 years since, I experienced dramatic changes in which I expect or demand of myself, and with whom and for whom I express my being. I'm sure it's also true or will become true for each of you. From birth to death, we are always a work in progress. Finally, do what you can. This maxim splits us into two groups, those of us who do less than we can, and those of us who do more and try to do more than they can and burn out. I tend to err on the latter side. But in retirement, I've been working on listening more closely to my body, my mind, and my soul. Another favorite quote of mine is from Aldous Huxley, who invoked, quote, "the merely muscular Christian who attempts the impossible task of continuously ladling from a bowl that is never replenished." Let me repeat that. The impossible task of continually ladling from a bowl that is never replenished. That's kind of an echo of E.B. White. My body wants 9 to 5 designated as sleep time. My hair wants to be washed only every 3 days, and my whole body craves regular exercise. These are replenishing. My mind craves the stimulation of teaching and learning, reading and writing, listening and speaking. My soul wants reflection, music, nature, companionship, and solitude. I do what I can to make the world a better place, but again, it takes me back to E.B. White and the balance or conflict between enjoying the world and improving it. Living in a retirement community, teaching at Holley, I encounter a lot of retirees who initially braced the notion that retirement was now their time to do nothing, to just enjoy the world. Having done enough for the world in their working and parenting years, it's now just to have a good time. Maybe a little travel, go off bridge, not much else. Sooner or later, they awoke to the same need for body, mind, and soul, and sought ways to meet those needs within whatever limitations they might be experiencing from age or infirmity. They have time and attention and wisdom to share, joy to experience, and a legacy to leave. May we do what we can to build a better world for us all to enjoy, know who we are, want what we have, and experience the wholeness of being, while practicing moderation in most things and passion in a few. If we can do this, practice this wisdom most of the time, it will be a gift to ourselves and all who encounter us. Amen. May it be so. And now, if you'll pass the cards to the aisle, I'll ask the ushers to bring them up, and Barbara and I will read them. Okay. Wow, that's a goodly number. Okay. Ready that one?
Be still and know that I am God. God is crossed out.
The O is crossed out. The O is crossed out. That's the Hebrew. Yeah. One must go trustful through the dark to earn the friendship of the stars. Scudder Middleton. Okay.
If you can't be good at it. Instead of having a perception, gain a perspective. Do or do not. There is no try.
Okay. This one's good. Life shrinks or expands in proportion to one's courage. Inez Nin.
A. Powell Davies said, life is an opportunity to grow a soul.
That's good. Learn from my high school math teacher, better never than late.
Power is strength and the ability to see yourself through your own eyes and not through the eyes of another. It is placing a circle of power at your own feet and not taking power from someone else's circle.
Okay. Be not afraid of going slowly. Be afraid of standing still. Chinese proverb. It's good.
Be the light you want to see in the world.
Rumi. I love his ancient poetry. He is in the back of our hymnal, "Come, come, whoever you are."
I have always wondered, how am I supposed to ask about what I don't know if I don't know that I don't know it?
Okay, don't sweat the small stuff, and it's all small stuff.
Wherever you go, there you are.
From Nancy Simmons, there are many twists and turns in life. You have to twist and turn through it to get through it. Good.
Be kind, for it will affect how people will remember you when you're gone.
I wish to be the person my dog thinks I am.
Oh. Find your patience and take the time to really listen to others and get to know their stories.
Good advice. We're all tied together in a garment of destiny. Martin Luther King Jr.
Ooh. Animals love you. Help them, especially those who need us. Adopt, rescue, donations for spay and neuter.
This is from somebody's back surgeon. When you think you are ready to do something, wait a week and do it.
In every walk with nature, one receives far more than he seeks.
John Muir. Yeah.
John Muir.
Thank you, everybody.
Those
Those
are
were
wonderful.
delightful. Yeah.
Wonderful.
And I want to introduce the closing hymn because I'm a word person. I read, I write, I speak, I listen. Sometimes I forget there are other important forms of communication: touch, embrace, sing, dance, laugh, weep, smile, silence. So let us end our service of worship with two of those expressions in hymn number 311.
211.
No, it's actually
Oh.
311. Sorry. 311, let it be a dance. And feel free to dance if you feel so moved. Sarah? Dance we do. Let me have this dance with you. Good times and bad times too. If you have heard words here to live, if you have heard words to live by here, take them with you. If you have shared words to live by here, keep them close by. For it is in sharing that we relight each other's candles. As we extinguish the chalice, take the light with you. Carry the light, share the light, be the light. Amen, and blessed be.